In today's video, I'm finally going to be taking on the huge challenge of decluttering this kitchen. It's something I've been putting off for way too long. To be perfectly honest with you, I've not done a single clear out of these cupboards since I moved into the house. And that was 5, nearly 6 years ago. And it's partly because of my sentimental attachment to everything. I struggle to throw even scrumpled up old pieces of paper away. And it's also partly because it didn't feel like a priority to me until it became a huge problem. So we've got our work cut out for us. There's lots to do, but I'm excited to show you the process. We are going to transform this cluttered, impractical kitchen into something neat and functional. And how we're going to do it is by splitting the project into lots of mini tasks and getting through it bit by bit. And I so hope you enjoy watching. So I thought I'd start with the knife and fork drawer first, just because out of the bunch it seemed like the least overwhelming. And I knew if I managed to get this one done, I'd feel like I was capable of doing the rest. As you can see, it's just been crammed full of all sorts. It ended up being the go-to place to just dash Mushroom's poo bags into, so I gathered them up. Mushroom's actually got her own cupboard right below this drawer, so I don't know why they were in there. But then again, I don't know why half the stuff's in any of the drawers or cupboards in this house. So I decided to get a plastic tub and just throw everything that we weren't going to use again into it and then throw it away. I have a problem with holding on to stuff just in case we might use it in the future, like those teething things, for example. Ike's 2 now, he's pretty much got all of his teeth. Why are they still in there? I don't know. But as I've explained in some of my other videos, it's gotten to the point now where I can barely close the doors of the drawers because there's so much stuff in there. So we're going to be as ruthless as possible with these drawers and strip it right back. I just want to have the bare essentials, just the few things we need to get by. 2024 is going to be the year I no longer have unnecessary stuff smushed into every crevice of this house. I've already come so far with the decluttering and I'm really proud of myself, but the kitchen and the big cupboard in my bedroom, they've just felt so daunting to me and I've been putting them off. And I don't know whether it's because I felt like I had to do it all in one go, because as you know, I usually do that with my cleaning. But I'm trying to remind myself that decluttering's a completely different ball game. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And once it's done, it's not something you have to keep going over each day. Once it's done and it'll maybe need a touch up every now and then, but what a relief that is. I think I'm going to do a preventative declutter every 3 months, so around 4 times a year, just so it doesn't get to this point again. But I've also heard some more drastic ways people keep the clutter at bay. Someone mentioned to me that they get rid of 5 things that they don't need each day. And while that seems a great and really steady way to go about it, I feel like I'd have nothing left if I did that. Who knows though? I think we really underestimate the amount of stuff we accumulate. Anyway, I've been taking it really slowly and getting through one drawer or cupboard every few days. And you know what? Dividing the whole thing into smaller tasks has actually made me look forward to it. And it's because I know it's not going to take me all day to do, I'm not going to be rushed, it's not going to be stressful, and I'll still have a good amount of the day left to do whatever else needs to be done and spend time with my family. So if you've got a mammoth declutter ahead of you, I really do recommend splitting it across days or even weeks. Anyway, as you can see, it got pretty grubby in this drawer. It's not something you easily notice when you can't see the bottom of the drawer. So that was mortifying, but it is what it is. We're dealing with it now. I can see how it happened though. It's right below the toaster and where I prepare food. So crumbs and bits and bobs could easily fall in there, especially when the drawer's always forced slightly ajar. But yeah, I found some hair grips in there. Don't ask. I had to gather them up and put them somewhere safe because they're like gold dust in this house. Then I gave the cutlery drawer a good old scrub. And then I also rewashed all of the cutlery because I didn't want to transfer them from the grubby drawer straight to the lovely newly washed drawer without washing them too. That would very much defeat the object. Now, I'm probably going to sound like the biggest weirdo for this, but does anyone else have a favourite fork or spoon? There's literally only one fork I like to use in this house, and it's the one with the thin, rounded handle. I really can't stand any of the others. I feel like they don't sit right in my hand. And if someone else picks up my special fork first, I feel like they've just spat in my face. I'm joking, obviously, and I'm not going to say, "Oi, give me that fork." To be honest, I don't even think I've mentioned it to Charlie. It's just a weird little thing I keep to myself. And I wondered if anyone else was the same. So yeah, tell me about your favourite spoon. I'd also like to know how people store their big knives and things like that, because I can't have it in one of those, you know, the things where you, what are they called? The big blocks of wood where all the knives are stuck in. God, that was a struggle, wasn't it? But I can't have one of those because I can't risk Ike pulling a chair up and pulling one out. So I've just been putting them loose next to the little cutlery drawer, which is fine, but it doesn't look the best. I imagine you can get bigger versions of the tray I've got, to be fair. But anyway, I just popped everything back in, and the rest of the stuff on the counter there, they're stuff I'm going to keep, but that no longer belong in this drawer. And we'll find the proper homes for them as we move through the declutter. So yeah, that's the first drawer done, and I am very pleased with myself. Next up, I decided to get the other drawer done. We call this one the messy drawer. I feel like everyone has a messy drawer in their house. But I decided I wanted to reduce it down and make it very simple in here. I wanted this drawer to be the place we keep pens, batteries, rulers, stationery stuff and notepads. I just want things to be easy to find. I'm fed up of rooting through and never being able to find things and having to pull everything out. It just adds stress and it's a waste of precious time. When I was younger, in my late teens and early 20s, I used to pride myself on being a chaotic person. Couldn't see the floor in my bedroom, every surface was covered in stuff, and I used to say, well, I like it this way and I know where everything is. Because I was an art student and I've always been arty, I noticed through myself and through other creative people that messiness and disorganisation kind of go hand in hand with that. And I kind of latched onto that as a part of my identity as an artist. And I used to tell people, this is the kind of environment I work best in. I need to have everything laid out around me, just leave me alone. And honestly, that was true. I'm a visual person, and while I'm working, I need to be looking at everything around me. If I can't see it, I'll forget about it. So I used to have a lot of resistance to anyone who'd told me to tidy up my space, because I saw it as an attack on my character and who I was as a person. And you know what? Still, even now, I have a resistance to people who try and tell others how to live their lives, because we don't know what it's like to be in someone else's shoes. And we all move through the world in different ways, and we all thrive in different environments and work best under different circumstances. And I think what works for us changes as we get older too, and as we move into different phases of our lives. Now that I'm in my 30s and I'm a mum, I just want a simple life and for things to be orderly and accessible. And because I have a more robust sense of self now, I know that wanting these things doesn't make me any less of a creative person. There's enough blooming chaos happening inside my brain, I don't need to live in it too. So coming to that realisation's really helping me with letting go of things. I know that might not make sense to a lot of people, but I hope it resonates with some. Anyway, I found some more hair grips in there, bonus, and I found the tweezers I've been looking for months. Honestly, I am one whisker away from being the proud owner of a goatee. And I've just been looking in the mirror and seeing a hair on my chin and thinking, I'll get it tomorrow. And then the next day, same thing. I just can't be bothered to find the tweezers, and more have been sprouting. I swear they just sprout out of nowhere. But yeah, I decided to put all of the old batteries into an old food tub we had lying around. I like to be resourceful and reuse old containers when I can, rather than getting new ones. Put all the pens into a pencil case so we're not always struggling to find one. Put a roll of sellotape in there, a ruler, a little sewing kit and a measuring tape. I've been using that measuring tape to track my body measurements, because I'm on a mission to get healthy this year and lose a bit of my belly fat. It's at a really unhealthy ratio compared to my height. It's almost the same as my height, I'm not going to lie. And I'd rather track what's going on with measurements rather than on the scale, because it's not an accurate depiction, is it, of what's actually happening. But yeah, that's another day and another drawer done. I am so happy with that. For my third pick, I decided to tackle something that was going to take a bit more effort, both in terms of time and brain power, because the space I'm dealing with under the sink is just not practical at all. And you'll realise this is the case for a lot of the cupboards later on. A huge portion of this cupboard is wrapped around a corner, it's a really tight space, and you can barely see what's back there. Believe it or not, I've reorganised this cupboard countless times, but it always quickly reverts back to the same state, because in order to find anything, you have to take things out and move everything around, and I just do not have time for it. So before I did anything with this cupboard, I came up with a plan. Firstly, I was going to get rid of at least half of the products in there. So many of them were nearly empty or actually empty, and for some reason I'd just thrown them back in there. And there are some I just don't get along with and just don't use. When it comes to cleaning products, I like to keep it really simple, and I have a few trusty favourites that I love and I always go back to. And really, I think a select few are all you need. Secondly, I came up with a plan of how to arrange everything for practicality. Over the past few months, I've seen a few people advertising these spinning plate thingies that you keep in your fridge usually. And they're used for things like condiments, so you can just spin it around and find what you're looking for and you don't have to dig all the way to the back. And I thought something like that would be perfect for my cleaning cupboard. So I popped down to the range and I found one of those. I bought a tub for my microfiber cloths and sponges, found an old food container for my gloves. And then, because we have so many huge bags of laundry pods, we always pick them up when they're reduced at work because they're just so expensive, aren't they? But anyway, I thought I'll buy a little jar for the pods, and then we can store the other bags that we're not using currently right at the back, and this will be a massive space saver. So that's what I'm doing here, and I already got rid of so many bulky boxes just in doing that. I also bought a little basket that you can hang onto the cupboard door. You'll see that later on. But I just think something like that makes everything more accessible, especially when you're prone to forgetting what you've actually got. Like I said earlier, I'm one of those people where if you can't see it, I'll forget it exists. So for me, something like that is perfect because you open the door and there's everything right in front of you, right in your line of vision. Anyway, here I am happily rolling up all of my cloths. Can you tell I've got a little bit of an obsession with these? I just love them. They come in so many pretty colours, and whenever I see a pack with a colour I don't have, I'm always so tempted. It's the little things, isn't it? And colourful things always brighten my day. And who doesn't want to be cheered up a bit when they're having to perform boring household chores? Ever since I was a child, I've always liked to collect things though. I've always wanted to have the full set or every colour that's available. And yeah, microfiber cloths are now my new thing. And if you've ever heard any of my childhood stories, I have told some of them on here about what I used to collect then. I think you'll find this a bit of an improvement. Or you might not, it depends on who you are. But I used to be obsessed with snails. I've had 2 snail phases in my life actually, one when I was a child and one about 5 years ago. I think it was about 5 years ago. I get hyperfixations, you see, where I zone in on a particular interest. Here's my little cloth box ready to go into the cupboard. But as I was saying, about 5 years ago, I got an obsession with giant African land snails. And I was like, that'll be such a cute little pet for us to keep because our house is small and it's low maintenance. So I got one for me and Rudy. Did I leave it at that? No. Unfortunately, I realised that there were many different subspecies and they all looked slightly different. Some had silver skin, some had tiger shells, some were reticulated. And I could not rest until I had every single one. They're not cheap either. We ended up with 14 giant African land snails. I even made an Instagram page for them. But yeah, if you know about neurodivergence and hyperfixations, you'll know that it's very intense. Like, I'd wake up and the first thing I'd think about was snails. And I'd sit there researching them and the regions in Africa the different subspecies were from. I had a little notebook where I'd write down the personality of each snail and what their favourite food was. I bought this really expensive ruler and I'd do weekly measurements. It was weird. Bear in mind at this point I had a job and a toddler I needed to be focusing on. But yeah, with hyperfixations, it often doesn't last long. Sometimes it does, but sometimes it's just a few weeks or months. And then you get an obsession with something else. My main ones are usually creative projects. You would not believe the amount of paints and canvases I've impulse bought over the years. And I've gone full force into these projects and obsessively worked on them for a week. Started to become delusional and decided this was the project. This is the one that's going to make me millions. And then pretty much as quickly as the obsession arrives, it fades again and then everything about it gives me the ick. And then I just have piles of craft supplies lying around the house. Luckily over the years I've managed to curb it a lot and recognise when it's a potential hyperfixation, rather than something I'm going to be genuinely passionate about long term. Like this YouTube channel for example, this is something that I am genuinely passionate about. It fulfills me and helps me stay productive and happy, and I never get bored of making videos. It's been a year and I'm still so excited every day. And by the way, I just want to make this very clear that the snails were not something I just got bored of and discarded. They were so loved and they lived with us for years, but sadly they ended up picking up a strain of mites that we couldn't get rid of. If that weren't the case, they'd be featured very heavily on this channel, much to the dismay of a lot of people, I'm sure. But yeah, overall I think my cloth obsession is very tame in comparison, and it links in very nicely to cleaning and this channel. So I happily allow myself that little indulgence. And to spend a few pounds on a pack if they've got a special pattern or colour on. Why not? Anyway, I borrowed my cousin's label maker. I've always wanted to use it. And I feel like sticking labels on things makes it all very official. As in, I am officially now one of those organisation queens who puts everything into different containers and labels everything. I think we all know that's not true. But I do think labelling things is going to come in very handy as we move on to the food and medicine cupboards. And I'd feel weird if only some of the tubs were labelled, so I just did them all. So, as you can see, I split my cleaning products into categories. I put all of the bathroom stuff like the smellies and the toilet fizzers onto the basket on the door. It's even got its own kitchen roll holder. That made Charlie very happy. He literally came home from work, saw it and ran back to buy some kitchen roll. And then on the spinning plate, I've put all of the products I use most often. That way they're always accessible and easy to grab. And everything else like stain removers, oven cleaners, drain unblockers, things we use occasionally, they're around the corner at the back of the cupboard. And I'm really hoping organising it this way helps to prevent it turning into chaos, basically. Only time will tell. But for now, I'm very chuffed with myself, especially the spinning plate. And we're one step closer to having a more organised kitchen, thank goodness. I must say, out of each of the declutters so far, this one's been the most taxing, but the most rewarding. Look at that. How satisfying. Scratched an itch in my brain, that has. Next up was Mushrooms Cupboard. Well, it was meant to be Mushrooms Cupboard, but as you can see, it ended up with bits and bobs of everything in there. So the plan for this one was very simple. Separate anything that wasn't dog food, dog treats, dog toys, and either find better homes for them or get rid of them. Quite honestly, I can't remember the last time I used anything from this cupboard that wasn't squash. For people in the US, that's squash as in diluted juice, not the vegetable. I know a lot of you were baffled when I mentioned squash in one of my other videos. But anyway, I decided most of what was making this cupboard so cluttered and basically unusable was going to be gotten rid of. And it had become unusable. It was one of my least favourite cupboards of the bunch. Every time I tried to get the boys a drink, stuff would fall out and crash all over the floor. And I'd end up kind of smushing it all back in whilst closing the door at the same time. And just hoping that next time I opened it, I didn't end up in A&E with a foot fracture. So yeah, not fun or functional in the slightest, and that's not what we're going for in 2024. And the silliest part is, we haven't even kept Mushrooms food in there for months. So yeah, I'm so looking forward to having a kitchen that doesn't cause me extra stress. I genuinely can't remember what it feels like to open a cupboard and know where everything is and not have to rummage around. Like, even thinking about it makes my blood pressure rise. And I don't even think that's an exaggeration. Just picture this though. You're trying to do the school run in the morning or get ready for work. You're running late as it is, because you're me, and when am I not running late? And then you can't find a pen to write in your son's reading record. And then you're trying to do packed lunches, which you should have done the night before, and you can't find a tub or cling film. You go to give the kids some juice and it lands on your toe. You've got about 10 minutes before you need to be heading out the door. And you're running in and out reminding your eldest to put his socks on and brush his teeth because you're dealing with a mini you who also has no concept of time. But you manage to get it all done and you think, oh, do you know what? I don't think we're going to be late this morning. And then you try to find their shoes amongst the pile of shoes and clothes and bags that are all crammed onto the floor of our tiny coat cupboard. It's just so much unnecessary aggro. Self-inflicted, yes. But my life's already jam-packed and hectic, and I just want things to run as smoothly as they possibly can. So this declutter, as time-consuming as it can feel, was the biggest gift to myself. So if the scenario I just described sounds anything like your mornings, and you struggle with time blindness or constantly running late, on top of being quite messy or a bit of a clutter magnet, I know decluttering, or at least reorganising, can make all the difference. It's not a fix-all solution that's going to get to the root of the issues, of course. Some of us are just naturally inclined to be a certain way, and there's nothing wrong with that. But there are things we can do to make life easier. And I'm compiling lists and experimenting to find the things that help me. Anyway, look how much better this cupboard looks. We've got a nice tray that fits the balls perfectly. We've got a tub of chews and treats. Next to that tub, we've got a tub of fish oils, vitamins, training treats. We've got a licky mat. We've got the poo bags that were scattered all over the drawer above. I don't know if you remember. Then we've got shampoos and conditioners and anti-bac sprays. We don't use those often, and we've got bandages because Mushroom gets something called happy tail. So sometimes she wags her tail so much it gets injured from hitting surfaces. But yeah, that's another one done. Next up, I decided to be brave and tackle the worst cupboard out of the lot. You know that I always like to put a positive spin on things and make the best of a difficult situation. You'll often hear me say, this wasn't so bad at all, or this didn't take as long as I expected, or this turned out to actually be quite fun. But this cupboard, no. This is the cupboard I've been dreading. And whilst with most of the other cupboards I was able to get it done in a decent amount of time and then go and do other things, this one took all day. I had to keep on having breaks and come back to it. It took so long I started in the morning, had to do the school run and then carry on after dinner, which I really didn't want to have to do. I wanted to spend time with the kids after the school run, but we got it done. And it's a task, unlike cleaning the living room, that I do not have to come back tomorrow and do again. And that's the main thing. It's done. As much as I love to be encouraging and give people motivation, sometimes I think it's good to admit that things can be hard. But it doesn't mean we're not capable of doing arduous things. We're not always going to look back on every task and think, do you know what? That was easier than I thought it was going to be. It wasn't. It was tough. But trust me, if I can buckle down and apply myself to a task like this, you most definitely can too. Amongst the chaos, I found my old snail measuring journal. I thought you'd appreciate having a look at that absurdity. But yeah, the reason I think I found this cupboard so hard, aside from the sheer amount of stuff I had to sift through, is this is the cupboard that I've stored a lot of sentimental things in. And it just kept on going. After I finished this pile, I pulled another giant pile out. And it was just full of old birthday cards that I've saved over the years, congratulations cards, handmade mother's cards, school reports and certificates, old photos. I even found old pregnancy tests in there. And I'd written the number of days past ovulation on the sticks. I took tests obsessively when we were trying for Ike to see if that second line was getting darker. And I know this sounds so strange, but I kept them at the time, even after I knew I was pregnant, because they almost felt like proof to me. Tangible proof that I was pregnant and that he existed. I can get like that. It's almost as if I feel like one day I'll wake up and find that the life I lead isn't real. That my children were never here and Charlie was a fabrication. And this lovely life I lead was all made up in my head. Does that make sense? I think it might be something to do with why I hold on to sentimental things, to the point we get into situations like this. Because my babies are so precious to me. The fact that I was even able to get pregnant, that I have the privilege of raising them, that there are little humans just living their life in my home, and I get to watch my family and friends interact with them. Sometimes it all just feels too good to be true. And I honestly don't know if anyone else will be able to relate to that. But yeah, that's why I kept them, as tangible proof that I was pregnant and I had a little life growing inside me. And that's why I find it so hard to get rid of cards as well. They're lovely, heartfelt messages from people that won't always be here. The way they word things, their handwriting, that's like a fingerprint, it's unique. And it genuinely breaks my heart thinking about throwing them away. So yeah, it was really tough, but I made the decision to get rid of the cards. Because I physically do not have the room to keep every card for every person from every year. It's just not doable. We don't have the space. So I took photos of them. That way we still get to keep the messages and the memories. I still feel like bursting into tears though. It feels like I've betrayed people and I don't know why. Honestly, this is why I get into these predicaments. And this is why I'm not a card sender myself. I do not send cards. Anyway, at the same time as feeling a little bit heartbroken, it does feel like a weight off. I feel lighter and I feel strong. After I put the things I was going to keep back into the cupboard, I made the decision to move the plates and bowls from the big cupboard over to this one. They always end up getting stuff plonked on top of them in the big cupboard, just because I don't think we're utilising the space very efficiently. It doesn't look nearly as bad as it usually does because Charlie'd just done a sort out. He'll regularly sort the cupboard out and then things will just gradually get more and more chaotic. Because of me, I'm not going to lie, me and my impatience. But we'll end up running out of room because I refuse to sort things and take out empty wrappers and things like that. I'm always in a rush and I think, I'll get to that later. Never do. and future me never thanks past me, nor does Charlie, bless him, all of the effort he puts in that I just ruin. So I think moving the plates into a different cupboard was a really good move. And we're on to the big cupboard. This is where we keep pots and pans, casserole dishes, slow cookers. A few shelves above we keep crisps, chocolates, snacky kind of stuff. Above that is a shelf for cereals and things like that. And at the very top it's where we keep paint and paint brushes and all of that kind of stuff. Paint for around the house. As you can see here, we had an accident with one of those paint cans. It slipped out of my hand when I was trying to put it away and it went everywhere. So yeah, probably not the most practical shelf to keep paint on. I spent what felt like half of the day trying to etch away at the paint with a butter knife. I really need to invest in a scraper. Anyway, when it comes to the big cupboard, we actually already do have containers and sections where certain things are supposed to go. But they don't seem to be effective when someone like me lives in the house. So I searched around for different styles of containers that were hopefully going to prevent me from stacking other stuff on top of them. I'll show you what I mean when we get to that shelf, but I'm sure what I'm saying doesn't really make sense at the minute. Anyway, I wanted to start a new habit in today's video. I don't know if you remember, but on my big January declutter video, I mentioned some of the cleaning accounts that I'd been watching. But later on I started thinking, these are all fairly or very well-known and well-established creators. And I thought it would be nice every so often to mention some of the smaller channels I've been enjoying. Because there are so many talented, hard-working and uplifting smaller channels that deserve just as much praise. So today I'd like to recommend a cleaning channel called Jodie Dunn My Messy Life. I started watching her videos actually after she mentioned me in one of hers. Some of her lovely followers told me that her videos were how they discovered me. I look like I'm going bold here. Very odd to see what the top of your head looks like. I don't like it. But anyway, naturally I went straight over and watched some of her videos. And I fell in love. Her videos are just so warm and welcoming. She has such an infectious laugh. And if you enjoy my videos for the chatting and the company, I'm sure you'll enjoy hers too. And I also wanted to recommend a self-development channel because I live on self-development YouTube. And I found this creator around a month ago. I like to go on long morning walks after the school run to reset my mind and get all of those lovely endorphins. And I have my earphones in and listen to YouTube as I'm walking. And I'll put something on and then after that's finished, I'll see what comes up next and see if it's a good fit for me. And as soon as I heard her speak, I was like, yes, I've found a new channel to obsess over. And her name is Baja Abdi. If you want to search her up, that's Bahja. She just speaks with such a calm but commanding confidence. And since I discovered her, I've watched her channel skyrocket in such a short space of time. She's close to 100k now, and she might even be at 100k when you watch this video. But if you like to watch YouTube for pep talks or to grow your self-confidence, definitely go and check her out. Anyway, back to what I'm actually doing here. So this was the shelf that I used to keep the plates on. And as you can see, I used two big containers, one for veg like potatoes and onions, because they usually ended up on top of the plates, still in their packaging. And then the other was for tins, because tins at the minute don't have a home, and they just end up shoved wherever we can fit them. It's annoying. Then for the next shelf up, which is the snack shelf I was talking about earlier, I got this dispenser, and it's originally intended to dispense cans in the fridge, but I thought, this is going to be great for crisps. This way they're not just stuffed into one of the trays willy-nilly. They're just wide enough to fit the crisps and therefore I'll be less inclined to try and balance stuff on top of it. That was my logic anyway. I also bought this little tray with compartments for things like chocolate and sweets so that they're separated and we know where each thing's supposed to go. Then for biscuits we already had this airtight container which has been working well for us, so I just filled that up. Next I moved on to the medicine cupboard because I needed a change. I was so bored of that big cupboard. And my plan here was to separate everything into different containers and just try and make everything a bit more convenient. As you probably gathered from the state of that cupboard, finding anything in there was a lot more difficult than it needed to be. Same as some of the other cupboards, you open the door and like 10 things fall out. So I thought these 3 containers would be good for separating the medicine. We've got one for paracetamol, one for ibuprofen and one for cold and flu stuff. I personally don't use cold and flu tablets. I feel like they're kind of unnecessary. But each to their own, because they're a go-to for Charlie and he swears by them. When I've got a cold or anything like that, I like to drink some of my granddad's homemade blackberry vinegar. It's amazing for soothing a sore throat And then I just put some vapour oil in a bowl with hot water, whack a tea towel over me, and inhale some of that. And of course, I do try and get some extra rest, but that's a lot easier said than done when you're a parent, isn't it? Anyway, once I finished that, I put all of the kids' vitamins into a tray, along with a bottle of Calpol and some of the syringy things and a spoon. Those things go missing so easily in this house. So I thought it was a good idea to gather all of the kids' things into one place, and then we're not rooting around and searching for them in the middle of the night if one of the kids wakes up feeling poorly. After that, I found an old takeaway container and put all of the plasters into that. My children have a strange obsession with plasters, especially my eldest. Are anyone else's kids the same? Everything needs a plaster. Even the tiniest, most invisible, microscopic wound needs a plaster. It must be a psychological thing. That and the fact that they've got funky patterns on a lot of the time. Can you tell I'm having so much fun with this label maker? But yeah, I'm the kind of mum who's like, let the air get to it, just let it breathe. I was an outdoor kid and I constantly had scrapes and grazes all over me. I just got on with it and carried on playing. So it's hilarious to watch my son asking for his 5th plaster of the day after it's just slid off from all the sweat. Anyway, I decided next shelf up was going to be for our vitamins and supplements. And this is probably going to annoy you, but I left top shelf for another time because it wasn't too bad. The next day I felt brave enough to tackle the rest of the big cupboard. At this point I was about 3 weeks into this decluttering project. A project I originally set aside a week for, mind. A bit ambitious of me, I think. I had this idea that I was going to work on it consecutively until it was done. But life always has other ideas, doesn't it? By the way, if you're suddenly wondering why I've grown a foot and sprouted a beard, I had to get Charlie to help me get the rest of the stuff out. But that even shocked me when I came to edit. I was like, what on earth? My arms have gotten very hairy. But back to what I was saying, it ended up taking a lot longer than I'd envisioned. There were some days I had work and other commitments, and some days I had to take a breather because it was all just doing my head in. But on this particular day, I'd woken up very determined to finish this cupboard and the food cupboard. I just didn't want it looming over me anymore. As you can see, I decided to put all of the cereals into airtight containers, with labels, of course. But previously we'd always end up with a pile-up of cereal boxes. And not only does that not look great, we'd end up forgetting what was actually in there and buying stuff when we didn't need it. And we're not trying to spend extra money if we can possibly help it. Cereal isn't cheap either, is it? That was one of the biggest shocks of my life, you know, when I moved out and realised how expensive cornflakes were. Moving on, I chose to keep the top shelf as a paint shelf still, but drastically reduced the amount of stuff we were going to keep there. Remember earlier when I said I needed a scraper? Well, turns out I had one the entire time. And that's the problem, it's gotten so cluttered I've got no idea what we've actually got. Anyway, there were 3 big pots of paint that we were never going to use again, so I got rid of them and just narrowed it all down to the bare essentials again. And we've made it to the final cupboard. Another tricky and time-consuming one, but knowing that it was the last one just spurred me on. There's Ike just eating old food off the floor, what can you do? Toddlers are a different breed. My plan of action here was to first get everything out and check the best buy dates. After 5 years of accumulation, it was a given that there was going to be some questionable stuff lurking at the back. To be honest, a lot of things in this cupboard aren't used that often. There were some things that were bought for specific recipes that we don't often make, and some sauces like mint sauce that we only eat with Sunday dinner, and we eat that once a week, if that. You get the picture. So a lot of stuff ended up having to go in the bin. I wasn't intended for that spaghetti to go in the bin though, but thanks to Ike it had to. Never mind, eh? He's been loving being in the thick of all of this and helping in his own special way, and that's something I never want to discourage. I think when it comes to big projects like this, it can be really tempting to just try and distract the little ones and send them into another room. Because let's be honest, they do slow you down. You know, it's enough stress as it is. Like, just look at this. It's overwhelming. But these moments are opportunities to bond and to teach. So I did my best to be patient and let him be involved when he wanted to be. Kids are always so proud to know they've helped and they've been part of accomplishing something. And this clip coming up just says it all.
Empty, yeah. Put it in the bin. Not yet, because we've still got some left in there, but let's find something else to put in the bin. How about this old garlic? You want to put that in? Yeah. Okay, you do that then. Good boy. And we've got some pasta to put into another thing.
I just wanted to leave that clip as it was. No voiceovers or explanations. His little eager voice just makes me well up. Sometimes when I'm hyper-focused on a task, I don't fully register what's happening in the moment. But the great thing about filming is I get to watch it back and fully appreciate it. And that was a moment that reminded me just how blessed I am. As you can see here, this cupboard was well overdue a clean, as was the case for the majority of them. Especially the cleaning cupboard under the sink. That one gets extra grubby because it leaks a little bit under there. I'm not complaining though because it broke up the monotony a little bit. I love to clean. I find it so therapeutic. You're probably scoffing at the screen right now. But it's true. Now, I really need your help and advice with this cupboard. I wasn't happy at all with how I managed to rearrange it. It still didn't seem very practical. I was happy with the bottom shelf, but the other two, not so much. So anyone with good organisation skills or knowledge, if you'd do me the huge favour of analysing this space and what needs to go into it, and letting me know how you'd arrange it differently, I'd appreciate that so much. I was thinking maybe a couple more spinny plate things, which I've since found out is called a Lazy Susan. Love that. But yeah, I was thinking more of those, but aside from that, I don't know what to do. I feel like everything's just going to get messy again really fast. I was a lot less enthusiastic when it came to this cupboard, just because I was over it all at this point. But when I come back in March-April time for my quarterly touch-up declutter, I'd love to implement some of your suggestions. Feel free to suggest things for the other cupboards as well. I'm all ears and open to anything. Anyway, despite not being particularly thrilled with this cupboard, I was so happy with it overall. And I cannot wait to show you the before and afters in a minute. I'm also going to show you the big bedroom cupboard, because that's my next project and it's terrible. And if you enjoyed this video, you're going to want to stick around and tune into that one too. Oh, I'm dreading it. Dreading it! But it's okay, we've got this. After this mammoth project, I know I'm capable and it will be so worth it. And I really hope watching this has shown you that you're capable too. Anyway, let's see what we've achieved. So let's go right back to the first one we did, which was the knife and fork drawer. Then we've got the messy drawer, which is not so messy anymore. I might start calling it the stationery drawer. Then we've got the cleaning cupboard, which is now my absolute favourite cupboard in the house. Look at it. So colourful and makes me so happy. Then we've got mushrooms cupboard. Again, so pleasing to look at now. Then we've got the messy cupboard, and I removed 2 bags full of clutter from that cupboard. So pleased with it now. The bottom of the big cupboard. And while I'm showing you this cupboard, can I just say, if you've made it this far, I'm so grateful and I really hope you enjoyed watching. This whole process has been a lot of hard work, from the decluttering to the filming to the editing, and it means the world to me that you've chosen to watch. And here is the last cupboard. And before I go, I'm going to quickly show you the next nightmare I'm going to be working on. I had hoped to get both the kitchen and this bedroom cupboard done this month, but considering the kitchen took 3 weeks, I'm going to have to extend Declutter January into February. It is what it is. Looking at it now, I'm sure you can imagine why I'm dreading it. Where do you even start? But yeah, this one will be coming up soon, so if you think you might enjoy it, tune in. And as always, thank you so much for sticking with me this long, and I really hope you enjoyed the video. See you in the next one.